I'm Cath. Welcome back to my channel and thank you very much for joining me for this video, which is all about sewing your own handmade knickers. I am a real convert to sewing my own handmade knickers. I started sewing them about a year ago and I haven't looked back. I find them much more comfy than shop-bought knickers. It's lovely to be able to perfect the fit of them to make your own perfect pair of knickers. And I find them a really speedy, satisfying sew too, so I always enjoy whipping up a new pair of handmade knickers. Also, I find them to be a great scrap buster. Pretty much all of the pairs of knickers I've made for myself to date, I've made using leftover fabrics. I've had remnants left over from other projects, so definitely a great scrap buster project too. So in this video, I'm sharing a few pairs of handmade knickers I've made to date, and then I'm going to make a new pair and I'm going to talk you through the whole sewing process, giving you lots of hints and tips and what I find works well all along the way. So the pattern I'm going to be using in today's video to sew up a pair of handmade knickers is this pattern here. It is the Iris Knickers pattern by Tilly and the Buttons, which they developed in collaboration with the lingerie designer Evie Lelouve. It's a really comfy knickers pattern, this one, and it's got a great size range too. You can get it in a size UK 6 up to a size UK 34. And as ever with Tilly and the Buttons patterns, the instructions are really detailed and there are loads of colour photographs included too, so this pattern is really designed to hold your hand throughout the sewing process. And what I particularly like about the Iris Knickers pattern is the pattern comes with quite a few different variations. I'll show you the line drawings. You can make them in 3 different waistlines, a high waistline, a mid waistline and a low waistline. And also 3 different leg openings too. Again, a high leg opening, a mid leg opening and a low leg opening. So you can really mix and match those different options to create your own perfect pair of knickers. And they also include options for sewing the knickers with different types of elastic. They include options for both fold over elastic and lacy elastic. So quite a comprehensive knickers pattern. But I thought I would mention there are other knickers patterns out there too. And another one that is really good that I'd recommend is the Megan Nielsen Acacia Pants pattern. That is a free pattern that you can download for free if you subscribe to the Megan Nielsen Patterns newsletter. And it comes again in a really good size range. You can get it in a size US 0 up to 20. And also in their curve range, which takes you from a US 14 up to 32. And there's also a children's option available on the Acacia Pants too. They are called the Mini Acacia Pants and they are available for ages 3 to 12. And I've made the Mini Acacia Pants for my daughter and she really loves them and finds them really comfy. There are a few differences between the Iris Knickers and the Acacia Pants, and one of them is the Acacia Pants are designed with only one variation, which is the low-rise bikini cut style knicker, so this style knicker here. But the pattern does include lots of different options for finishing the knickers with different types of elastic. It includes options for finishing with regular elastic, lacy lingerie elastic, fold over elastic, and also with contrast fabric bands. So it's another great pattern. And I will link both patterns, the Iris Knickers pattern and the Acacia Pants pattern, both down below in case you fancy checking them out. And I should mention there are a few differences in terms of how the Iris Knickers and the Acacia Pants sew up. And I'll mention a couple of those differences as I go through this video and talk about my personal preferences between the different methods and styles of the 2 patterns. So before I get started on making my pair of handmade knickers, I thought I'd share a few pairs that I've made earlier. Firstly, I've got a few pairs of my Iris knickers I've made for myself here. So here they are. This pair I used leftover black cotton jersey and had a bit of fun by using hot pink fold over elastic to finish this pair. This is a bit more of a classic pair, using this lovely white floral cotton jersey. And I've got another pair too, again, using leftover jersey with blue fold over elastic this time. And as you can see, they're all quite similar in terms of their style and shape because I found my perfect style and that's the style I like to make. And I'll talk more about the adjustments I made to the pattern to get my perfect pair of knickers in a moment. But I'll also share a few of the mini Acacia Pants I've made for my daughter so you can see how the Acacia Pants look like in terms of style. This is one pair I made for my daughter with this cute unicorn print on, and I had a little bow on the front so she can tell which way round to put them on. Another pair here using this cute kitten print cotton jersey and hot pink elastic on them. So as you can see, they've got a slightly lower rise on them, but yeah, she finds them really comfy to wear. So let's get started sewing a pair of handmade knickers. And I've got everything here that I need to get started. I've got the sewing pattern. I've got some blue cotton jersey fabric that's left over from another project. You can see It's just a scrap, but there's definitely plenty here to make at least one pair of handmade knickers. And I've also got some fold over elastic, which is my preferred type of elastic for finishing a pair of handmade knickers. But I'll talk about sizing first, and the size I used from the RS Knickers pattern. So my measurements are 26 inches on the waist and 36 inches on the hips. And when I look at the sizing on the RS Knickers pattern, that will put me as a UK 8 on the waist, and then between a UK 8 and a UK 10 on the hips. And when I traced out my first pair of RS Knickers, I decided to go for a straight size 9. So essentially I drew a line in between the sizes 8 and 10 to make that sort of size for me. I could have graded down to a size 8 at the waist, but actually I don't like my knickers too tight, so I thought I'd just go for a size 9, and I could always take it in the bits at the waist at a later point if I needed to. But I haven't needed to. I find the straight size 9 nice and comfy for me. And then in terms of deciding which of the options I went for, which waistline option and which leg option to go for, I basically found my most comfiest pair of short bought knickers, and I compared those knickers to the pattern pieces of the RS Pants pattern. I sort of laid it all out on the floor and had a look to see which one it most closely resembled. And I found it looked like it most closely resembled the mid-waist and the mid-rise leg opening. So I decided to go for that for my first pair of RS Knickers, which I guess I kind of treated as a bit of a toile. So I sewed them up and found them really comfy, and I really like the fit around the hips and the waist, but I did find they came up a little bit high. So the only adjustment I've made to get my perfect pair of handmade knickers is just to bring the waistline down. I think I took off 1.5 centimetres all the way around the top, just to get a slightly lower rise than the mid-rise option on this pattern, and I find that really, really comfy. So that's what I'm going to do today. So I've got 3 pattern pieces to cut out. It's a nice speedy one to cut out, this pattern, as well as a speedy sew. Here is my back pattern piece. Here is my front pattern piece, and here is the gusset piece. So yeah, nice and straightforward. And I thought I'd mention at this point as well in terms of the elastic. So a lot of people have asked me, yeah, what I do with the elastic, what kind of elastic I get. So this is the fold over elastic I get. It is a 16mm wide fold over elastic, and this came from Guthrie Garney. I will link their fold over elastic down below, but I think you can also get it on eBay. It's quite easily available in this size. So you can see it's got one shiny side and one matte side, and it's personal preference as to which side you use as the right side. Both sides work fine, but I generally go for the shiny side just because I think it's a little bit prettier. And what's nice about this elastic is it's got a fold down the middle, so it makes it really easy to sew on. You don't have to create the fold yourself, it's already there. So I'm going to use this hot pink colourway for my pants. I thought it would look quite funky with this blue. So my first step now is to get this fabric ironed because it's gone a bit crinkly, and I'm going to cut out the pattern pieces. So I'll turn the camera around and show me doing that next. So I've got my handmade knickers fabric all cut out. Now, as you can see, it didn't take very long. There were just 3 pieces and they're quite small. And now it's time to get sewing. And the first job to do is finish one of the edges of the gusset piece of the knickers. So this little short edge at the front needs to be finished by overlocking it because it's going to be a raw edge in the knickers. So I'll show you a pair I've made earlier. Here's my earlier pair I made, and you can see inside here is the gusset, and the front piece here is open, so I've overlocked along this edge. And I guess you don't technically need to overlock along the edge because it is jersey fabric, so it shouldn't fray, but I think it gives a nice finish. And I thought I'd mention at this point that is one of the differences between the Iris Knickers pattern by Tilly and the Buttons and the Megan Nielsen Acacia Knickers pattern. The tilly in the buttons pattern is constructed leaving that edge open at the front of the gusset. But the Megan Nielsen pattern involves cutting 4 pattern pieces, including 2 gusset pieces, and then you sew it up sort of using the burrito method. So you end up with enclosed seams at the front and back of the gusset. I'll show you how they're finished here. So you can see with my daughter's pair, both the front gusset and the back gusset seam are both enclosed, so there are no raw edges there. So it's a slightly different method, and I think both work really well. And when I make the Iris knickers, for me, I follow the tilly in the buttons method with that raw edge overlocking it. When I make the acacia knickers for my daughter, I use the burrito method to enclose them. I don't have a personal preference. I think they both work really well, but you might have a personal preference. But anyway, for this pair I'm making today, I'm doing the tilly in the buttons method. So I'm going to overlock that seam. So I'm going to get my overlocker out, just quickly whiz along there, and then I'll get sewing the knickers together. So I've got that front edge of the gusset all overlocked now. Here I used a navy blue overlocker thread. That was the closest match I had to this royal blue colour cotton jersey. And the next step is to put all 3 pants pattern pieces together. So I'm going to lower the camera slightly so you can see how they come together now. So I've got the front pattern piece here. This is the crotch here and it's right side up. And then onto that, right sides together, I put the back pattern piece, and they need to join up here at the crotch. And then on top of that again goes the gusset, and that goes right side down, so wrong side up on top. And these 3 pieces all need to be pinned together so they can be sewn together. But as you can see, they're a slightly different shape in terms of the curve here. So they'll need a bit of ease to put them together. So I'm going to do that now. So I've got all 3 pieces clipped together at the crotch seam here now, ready to sew. You have to be really careful to make sure you have got all 3 layers included all the way along so that one doesn't slip out, because the middle piece, the back pattern piece, does have a different curve to the front and gusset pieces. And I quite like to use these wonder clips when I'm sewing with jersey. I find them just easier to use, but I have actually put a pin right at the start of this line, just because I find when I'm using the sewing machine, the wonder clips can sometimes be a bit bulky and hard to get under the machine, but with this pin I can make sure all the pieces of fabric stay nicely in place at the beginning and the pin will slip under the machine, so I can start sewing there and make sure I've caught all 3 pieces of fabric easily at the beginning, and then use wonder clips along the rest of the way. That's just my favourite way to start a jersey seam. So I'm going to get my sewing machine out now and sew that seam. So I've sewed those 3 pieces all together now using a narrow zigzag stitch, and I usually like to use a zigzag stitch with a width of 1mm and a length of 2.6mm when I'm doing a narrow zigzag stitch. They're all stitched together now, and the next step is to sort of stay stitch down the gusset so it stays in place when you attach the leg elastic. So you can see here I've got the back of the knickers and the front of the knickers, and here's the gusset, and it's kind of hanging loose at the moment. And I'm going to stay stitch down each side, this side and this side, using another narrow zigzag stitch just to attach it to the front piece, so that when I attach the elastic on top, these pieces won't shift, and I'll make sure to catch both of them with the elastic. So that's my plan, just to use a narrow zigzag down both sides just to get it all staying together nicely. So I've got those edges of the crotch area nicely stay stitched now, which should make attaching the leg elastic a lot easier. There's no risk of not catching one of the edges, they're nice and secure together. So the next step for the Iris knickers is inserting the leg elastic. But I thought I'd mention at this point, there's a bit of a difference in terms of how the elastic is inserted on the Iris knickers versus the Megan Nielsen acacia knickers. For the acacia knickers, the next step at this point would be to sew the side seams on the knickers, so that you create a pair of pants which has 2 sort of leg opening holes. You then calculate the amount of elastic you need for each leg hole, and then sew the elastic in the round, and you'd quarter both the leg hole and the elastic and attach it like that. The tilling the buttons method is a bit different though. It's a bit more relaxed, I'd say. Instead of calculating the amount of elastic you need and cutting it and sewing it in the round, you actually attach it on the flat. So you attach it from one end to the other, and you get the right tension by just pulling the elastic the right amount so that you create the sort of tension you want around your leg, which takes a bit of practice in terms of how much you need to pull the elastic to get the right length. So I guess if you like to follow instructions to the T and you like to know exactly how much elastic you need beforehand, you might want to try the Megan Nielsen method of calculating the elastic beforehand and then doing the quartering method. But I'm not a big fan of the quartering method. I much prefer this slightly more relaxed method where you just pop the elastic on and pull it. And I've kind of now made a few pairs of knickers, have an idea of how much I need to pull it to get the sort of right amount of tension to create the kind of fit I want around the legs and around the waist too. So I thought I'd show you on a few scraps how much difference it can make when you do pull the elastic a lot or not enough. It can really make a big difference. So it's one of those things, if you're using the tilling the buttons iris method of attaching elastics or pulling it as you go, that you need to have a bit of practice on before you go to use your proper kind of fabric, just so you kind of know what you're doing. You don't end up with pants that either have really, really tight elastic around the legs or really, really loose elastic. So I'll sort of turn the camera around and show you on my machine a little bit of how much you need to pull the elastic. So here is the piece of fabric I'm going to be using as an example for how tight to pull the fold over elastic. So I've got the elastic secured onto the fabric at the top here with a pin. This fabric is right side up and the fold over elastic is just underneath, and I'm going to sew along here with a zigzag stitch, trying to make sure that the fabric doesn't come over the middle of the fold over elastic over this folding line, because the plan is to stitch it all down and then top stitch over the top. So this will be the final finish on top of the pants. I'll zigzag that down afterwards on top. So basically I'm going to use a 3mm wide and 3mm length zigzag stitch. I'm going to start along here. I'm going to pull this elastic, and the first side I'm going to pull it a bit too much so you can see how you can get it too tight and how much that would involve pulling it. Sort of if I put it really taut like that, that'll be too tight. And the second side I'm not going to pull it enough so you can see the difference. So I'm going to start on this side and pull it a bit too much. So I'll pop it under here, get it secured on. Once I've got it secured on, take the pin out, I'm going to pull it really, really tight. So you can see I'm putting it really taut now. I'm pulling it pretty much as much as I could. You can see that elastic is really, really tight. So I think if you did the whole pair of pants like that, you'd end up with very tight leg openings and it wouldn't be very comfy to wear. So you definitely don't want to pull the elastic super taut. It's more of a gentle pull. But I'll do the other side now. I'll pin it onto this side now and show you what happens if you don't pull it quite enough. Again, using the same zigzag stitch and a pin to start it off. That is me pretty much barely pulling it at all. And what happens is the fabric starts to stretch out, so you won't end up with any sort of tautness in your elastic at all. The fabric will just stretch out. You end up with very baggy leg holes. So you kind of need to get the sort of tension perfected to pull somewhere in between those amounts, a gentle pull on the machine. So I'm going to get the fabric attached to the pants and show you how I do it on my proper pants version now. Okay, so I've got my proper iris pants here. I've got the leg elastic ready to insert. Got the pants right side up, the leg elastic underneath, and I'm going to get that going, and I'm going to just pull gently on it as I take it around the leg hole. So there we go. Just going to do a gentle pull on it here, guiding it through. And as I go, I just kind of let it sort of slip through my thumb and my fingers here. Just you can see at the back here it's got a little bit of elastic to it. It's a little bit of give, but it's not sort of gone super duper sort of wrinkled and tight. trim that off. So you can see there's a little bit of a wrinkle there to it, so there'll be a little bit of tension around the leg hole, but it's not being pulled super tight, so it'll be uncomfortably tight. And so now I'm going to do the same on the other leg, and then I'm going to top stitch them both down on top. But yeah, I'll add the other leg elastic first. So I've got both the pieces of leg elastic inserted now, and as you can see there's a bit of give to them, so that should give a nice sort of hold around the leg openings, hopefully not too tight though. So the next step is to top stitch the elastic down, and this is one of my favourite steps in sewing handmade knickers. So basically the elastic needs to be folded over to the front, to the right side of the pants, and top stitched down on the top here. And I like to top stitch it using a 3x3 zigzag. And you could sort of clip all along to hold the elastic in place as you go, but I find because there's a natural fold in the elastic anyway, I find I don't really need to. I just sort of use my fingers to sort of fold it over as I go along and let the machine do its job. And for this top stitching, you don't need to stretch the elastic out. I think if you did, you might risk over stretching it and losing that sort of tautness that you want for a pair of knickers for around the leg opening. So I just let the machine do its job and guide the fabric through. So that is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to top stitch both of the leg elastics down. So you can see I've top stitched the elastic down, shiny side out. It looks nice and neat and smart. And I'm ready for the next step of the process, which is to sew one of the side seams of the knickers. And once you've sewed one side seam, you can then do the same method like for the leg holes of attaching the waistband elastic. So you can attach it all in one long go, all around the edge, pulling gently as well. But I'm going to sew that side seam up first now. So I got that side seam sewn up now, and I tried to sort of match the elastic nicely, so it looked like a continuous piece there around that leg opening. And now it's time to attach the waistband elastic. So you follow the same method as attaching the leg opening elastic. I'll pop the elastic on. So I've got the right side of my fabric here. I'm going to put the elastic on underneath, and I've got the non-shiny side of the elastic facing up, because then when I turn it over, the shiny side will show on the outside. So I've got the non-shiny side up. I'm going to start it off here by grabbing a little pin to start it off. And I'm going to pull on it gently all around the waistband as I take the elastic round again with a zigzag stitch. And then once I've got it all attached, I'm going to fold it over and top stitch it in place. And then the final step is to sew the second side seam, and it's all done. So they start to come together really quickly once the elastic starts going on. So I'm just going to sew this elastic on now, pulling gently as I go. That waistband elastic is on now. Again, it's got a bit of stretch to it, so it should hold nicely in place. So now it's time to fold it over and top stitch it down, my favourite part, and then sew the side seam to complete these knickers. So I'm going to do those steps now. here are my finished knickers. I'm really happy with how they turned out. I like the royal blue with the pop of hot pink, and it's nice to know I've used up some more of my fabric scraps too to make a really comfy pair of handmade knickers that I know I'll get lots of wear out of. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and found some of the tips and hints in it helpful, and it might encourage you to sew your own pair of handmade knickers. If you have enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to my channel then please do subscribe. I've got plenty of sewing content coming your way. Please press the bell icon too so you are notified of my future videos. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you for another video again soon. Bye!